Hi, thanks for joining me. My name is Josh Leonard, and along with Thomas Harper, I oversee the work study program here at UNC. And this is one of three presentations that we presented in May over the Federal Work Study Program in our annual update meeting. This section is going to be about financial aid by the numbers and the survey data from our three annual surveys that we did. So this is our by the numbers slide to sort of give you an idea of what happened in 2017, 2018. We awarded the equivalent of 1 in 4 undergraduate students the opportunity to participate in the program. Of those, about half actually did participate. They worked with over 1,200 supervisors in over 1,400 different positions, which was pretty much across the campus and in several community partners. And in doing so, we were able to hand out nearly $4.3 million in wages. Another way to think about that is we gave students $4.3 million that they worked for and didn't take out in loans. So it was a really big year for the program, and we appreciate all the students and supervisors who participated and made this possible. There's 2 of us, Thomas and myself. It's about 1.5 FTEs because we have other commitments, and 3,600 other people. So if you're one of those 3,600 people, thank you. We really appreciate your work over the year. If you look over on the right side of the screen, you can see where the money came from. Around 1/3 of it was federal, about 7% of it was state, and as always, the institutional portion fills in the gap between what the federal government and the state supply and what we actually spend. This year that was around 58% of our total budget. Our students came from across the campus. You can see there was about 1/4 of the populations were each in the biological and health sciences and social sciences, and then we had a pretty good smattering of other categories, including students who weren't sure what their area of study is and were undecided. But overall, this is pretty reflective of the campus's population for undergraduate students. This is a graph from our annual survey, which I'll show you the statistics on a little sooner, but I thought this one was poignant to point out at this juncture because you can see that we have students, thankfully they're not working between midnight and 6 a.m., but pretty much from 6 a.m. to midnight, 7 days a week, there will be a work study student somewhere on the campus or in the community working as part of this program. So we are not quite around the clock anymore, but very, very much close to we also had a really big year in terms of starting to recognize some of the accomplishments of our participants in that we unveiled the Workies, which is our version of the Work Study Awards for the year. We did this as part of National Student Employment Week, which always happens the second week in April. It was the 8th through the 14th this year. And in our inaugural year of the Workies, we honored people in 5 categories. 2 Students of the Year, 2 Supervisors of the Year. We had 1 coolest job, 2 that tied for the most distinct job, which is a little bit of a nomenclature issue, but we rolled with it because they were both such great candidates. And then we had a whole bunch of special recognition awards. So for the first year, not bad. 231 people submitted 296 nominations. So it was extremely rewarding to see all the people who've worked so hard for so many years and the students who've done so many great things finally getting a nod for those efforts. So here are just a few of our winners. Our Students of the Year at the top left and the bottom right. Our most distinct job, one of them is in the top right here. Our Supervisor of the Year in the middle, and on the bottom left is our coolest job of the year, the Beam Makerspace. They're a really great partner for this program. And FYI, I encourage you to check them out if you are a member of the campus. Their makerspaces are open to everyone who works at UNC. I'm missing one of my winners. There's one more most distinct job. Let me move you to the next slide. Oh, sorry. There you go. That is our other most distinct winner in the Zebrafish Aquaculture Lab. They play with glowing fish and robots that help take care of the fish. So we had a really great opportunity to go in and talk to everybody and got this photo. And the work they did, all of our participants did, was so amazing that we were actually able to get an article put up on the UNC website about it. So that's where this is coming from. So definitely a great year to be part of the program, and everyone's looking forward to the Workies for 2019. So here's that annual survey data I talked about earlier. We run 3 surveys annually. One is for work study students who received the award and participated. There are, as you might have seen in the by the number slide, over 2,400 of those people, and we got 675 responses. We got 117 responses from students who received a work study award but chose not to participate in the program. Mostly that survey is about why they didn't participate and what we can do to improve that. And then of our around 1,400 supervisors, we got 208 responses back from them, letting us know their perspective on the year. So here's one of the first supervisor-driven slides. This is about how many years people have been supervising work study students. As you can see, the most common category is less than a year, so we do have a lot of new people. But when you balance that about against the people who've been here for 1+ years, you see a much larger portion of this program has been with us a while, including a number of individuals who's been doing this for more than 15 years, which is the number of students that were supervised each year. The most common answer is 1, so most supervisors just have 1 amongst these options. But if you look, there's a lot of people with more than one student that they're supervising. Excuse me. So I would say that the most common thing is to supervise multiple students. And if you look at the graph at the bottom, the little donut over here on the right, the green zone is for people who are supervising more than one position, which means students doing different jobs. So 55% of our supervisors have at least 2 different jobs that they're overseeing. And when we ask those people how many students are in each one of those, the most common answer is 2. So we have a lot of different students doing a lot of different things. And if you're watching this and you're on the fence about, well, I don't know if I want to open up multiple different positions where the students are doing different thing and I oversee them in their different duties, please, by all means, think about doing so. That's really great about this program, is that we do offer such a wide variety of opportunities, and in a lot of cases there are opportunities for students to build upon their previous year or their previous semester duties. This was a new question this year. We were curious about if supervisors are just supervising just new students, just returning students, some balance of the two. And what we found is, actually surprisingly, there's a lot of positions that are just returning, or excuse me, they're just returning or just new. They're not a mix, as you can see by this 0 chart. So that led to some very interesting things that I'll talk about in the next stage of this presentation on new initiatives for this year and new programs. But if you take a look at the graph, you can see, again, wide variety on whether people are supervising just new, just returning, or most commonly some of each. We asked students a similar question. How many of you are coming back to the same job or substantially the same job that you did last year? And this was comforting, but a little surprising, that 1/3 of our students are actually just going right back to the same job they had the year before. So that opens up some opportunities in terms of growing positions, making more opportunities in the same location with the same people for students, and led to the second of our 4 new initiatives. Again, I'll talk about that in the next presentation, but it's something that supervisors who've been with the program for a while really seemed to enjoy when we did this presentation live at the end of May. We asked supervisors, how satisfied are you with the program, technology, and training? As you can see, everything but the semi-nebulous training on other aspects, 9 out of 10 supervisors were happy with. And really, for most of these questions, that red zone, the people who aren't happy with things, is very, very small. So based on this feedback, I can say that we are honestly doing a great job with our technology and training, but we are always looking to get better. So if you as a supervisor have ideas about how we could do that, please email us at work-study@unc.edu. That goes to Thomas and myself, the whole work study team, and we're always looking for ideas on how to get better. This is one of our program satisfaction rates. This was the exact same question as supervisors and students, and we asked, how do you feel about the program? Are you satisfied, dissatisfied? And as you can see, for the most part, everybody's really happy. To put it in context, there hasn't been a president with these kinds of approval numbers since they started taking approval numbers on presidents. So we like to think we're doing really good, and it seems like most people are happy. Definitely some room for improvement. There is some dissatisfaction there, but we are working to make the program better every year, every semester, heck, every day that we can. Again, we're always looking for new ideas on how to do that. Here's what I like to call telling matrix. Our surveys are pretty big, so I like to pull out some questions that really seem a little shocking to me. So I'm going to go to the left side here. We looked and we asked supervisors, how does 17-18 compare to 16-17? And you'll note about 20% of the people said, really, I didn't see much of a change. But well over 80%, 81% of people here said, yeah, the program's actually getting better. And shockingly, nobody had a worse time in 17-18 than they did in 16-17. So I like to think that the changes we're making, I know they're rough on a lot of people, and I'm sorry about that, but hopefully you can see the effects of it are making the program a better place for everybody. Onto the middle graph, will supervisors come back? You can see that the definitely yes and the probably yes actually add up to 100%. There's less than 1% who said definitely not. I like to think that based on some of the comments associated with this person's response, they may be retiring, which is why they're not coming back. And then people who would recommend that other supervisors participate, you can sort of add up the numbers there. 85% said yes, 12% said yes, 2% said maybe, that's 99%, and then about 1% said, probably wouldn't recommend other people participate. Again, we like to joke that 1% just doesn't want to share the work study pool with other people. They want to keep it all themselves. But honestly, we know it's a great program. We're trying to make it better. That's what these graphs tell us. But again, we are trying to figure out ways to make people who are not satisfied satisfied and to make the program better every year. This was another dual question. We asked students and supervisors, which of these categories is your work study position in? The actual percentages are not drawn from our job posting. They're purely based on these responses, but they're a pretty representative number when you look at the slicings. Office administrative, sort of clerical positions are definitely our biggest category. It's closer to the 40% than the 49%, but yes, it's definitely a large group. And then the laboratory research positions are our second biggest. From there, it does get kind of muddled. Customer service is a big chunk. Teaching and tutoring is definitely a big chunk. The other none of the above is you know, sort of a catch-all, so it's hard to say there. But this is more or less a pretty reasonable picturation of what categories our positions are in and available for. We asked students a very poignant question for those of you who are supervisors. Why did they pick their job? And for the second year in a row, and this keeps with national trends, the biggest reason students say that they're picking their job is that they are interested in the work, which is great. We love seeing that really an interest in what they're doing is the single greatest factor in why students are choosing jobs. And for the record, these are multi-selection questions, so a student could pick every option on here and still interest in work came out far ahead. Also, a very large number of students saying it relates to their academic, personal, and professional goals, which is wonderful because we're really trying to expand those categories, make these positions more developmental. In keeping with federal regulations on the topic, every position we have should be as related to personal, academic, or professional growth as we can make it. So glad to see those categories are so prevalent and growing. We also had sort of an interesting graph here. This provides an important service. It jumped up a little bit from last year, and it's one of the top major reasons here. So that's good. Again, it all ties back into what students are doing in these positions is something important to them, and it's helping them get where they want to go. Now, there's two other categories I'm going to unveil now. Other reasons students are picking positions: monetary reasons. Of course, these are jobs, so they're definitely looking at the money. And then convenient location. So it's not shocking that students who live on the south side of campus don't want to walk all the way to the far side of campus, the north end, to do their shifts. They might spend as long getting over there as they do working. But it's something good for supervisors to know that location is important to these students. So if you are sort of on one of the far-flung corners of the UNC campus, maybe pointing out how easy it is to get to that location through the bus system or the walking paths, or for our on-campus partners that you have parking spaces, those sorts of things might help you in your postings for the upcoming year. This is a graph we asked supervisors: how many unfilled positions did you have in a year? And what it's saying is basically we filled 88% of the positions out there. Which is great. We normally do have more jobs than we wind up filling. Part of that is people ask for multiple positions and they may not fill them all, which is fine. But it also says that, this graph reflects that there's some slack in the system, that we're not filling every job, and we know we have students without jobs. Let me show you that on the next slide. here is this non-participant process funnel. Like I said earlier, about half the people, or the equivalent of half the people that we offer work-study awards to, don't actually participate in the program. So we know we have extra jobs and we have extra students, so we need to do a better job pairing those up, which is part of some of the new initiatives we're unveiling too. Again, we'll talk more about that in the next presentation on this topic. But this was the result of several questions on the annual survey to students who received a work-study award but didn't participate, trying to narrow down exactly where students sort of fall out of the process. So of the people who responded, only about 2/3 of the students who got an award and didn't participate even actually searched for a job. And of those, 63% of that 2/3 applied. So if you run the numbers, it's somewhere in the mid 40% of the people who got an award but didn't work even tried to find a job. But we do see the biggest fall off here is between applied to the job and interviewed, which says to me, in interpreting this, that we have a number of students who are applying to positions that they're not qualified for or aren't presenting themselves as qualified for, which means we're going to need to do more work with students in the upcoming year about resumes and cover letters and job searches. So we're definitely planning on working on some of that over the summer. And then you can see there are students who, of the ones who interviewed, about 10% of those did receive offers and yet still didn't go into the program. Let me show you why all of these groups chose not to be a part of the work-study program in 17-18. So we went and we asked those students who didn't participate in the program a very poignant question. We said, we know you didn't participate, you had an opportunity to participate, can you tell us why you didn't want to be a part of the program? And they came back with a lot of responses, and these are the top three. The first one is they were concerned that the work-study program, the work they would do, the time they would spend would interfere with their academics, which is, it's sort of the opposite of what actually happens. We do see improvements in academics more often than disimprovements. I'll talk about that more a little later. Second biggest reason is the student found a job outside of the program, which is, you know, great. We offer students the opportunity through work study if they find a job outside of it. That's just more funding we have to allocate to other students. Absolutely fine. But the third reason here, nearly 30% of students said they never found a suitable job, which is problematic. We know we have open positions from the earlier slide, and we know we have students who are looking for jobs that aren't finding them and just not finding the right job. So you're going to see more during the 18-19 academic year where Thomas and I, the whole work study team, are trying to do more with helping students find suitable jobs, putting together better resumes and cover letters, better assessing positions, and in general helping students find the positions that are open that really are a good fit for them that they're just not seeing. So here's the question I just referenced about the really misunderstood relationship between work study and academics. If you look at the graph on the left, this one is when we ask students, how does being in the work study program affect your work/life/academic balance? Are you able to get it all done? Are you able to get through your day and be effective and efficient? And when you look at this data and you add up the numbers, you see that far more than half, nearly 2/3 of these students say being in the work study program actually positively affects my ability to balance everything. And then another 25% said, you know what, being in the program, there are no adverse effects. It doesn't help, but there's no adverse. And then 14% said, yes, I had a problem. 13% a little problem. 1% had a really big problem. Work study was not good for them. So we know that being in work study has a lot of benefits. This one clearly proving that it can help with your life balancing amongst all the different aspects, and you're far more likely to be helped than you are to be hurt by being in the program. The graph on the right talks straight about academic performance. What is the impact of being in work study on your academics? Again, if you add this up, 39% of people said I had better academics because I was in the work study program. 39%. They're spending more time working, and yet they're saying that that time has positively affected their GPA, their scores. They're doing better as a student because of their work study. Just over half the students said there's no effect. Being in the program doesn't change anything with my academics. 10% had a bit of a negative experience. Yes, there was more stress. I wasn't able to get as much done, those sorts of things. And then less than 1% said being a work study student really hurt me academically. So again, looking at the numbers here, there is a 90% chance that you will do as well or better being a work-study student in terms of academics, and only a 10% chance, 1 in 10, that things will go not as well for you academically being in this program. Even though we have students telling us in the survey, I'm concerned about doing work study because I think it's going to hurt my grades. So definitely some false perceptions of the program out there. We had very similar results in last year's survey, which we sent out to all the students for 17-18. So we are going to continue and try to utilize this information in combating that false perception about work study being bad for you being a student. All right, here's one purely for the supervisors viewing this program. When do students start looking for jobs? Graph on the left, 73.99% of them start looking before the first day of classes. That's good because we opened the system up on August 1st, which means in that roughly 3 weeks between us opening the system and students coming to campus, around 3/4 of our students are doing their job searches, which is great. Another 15% during that first 2 weeks of class, and then a little over 10% are somewhere between the third week of classes and the end of the spring term. Now keep in mind, this is every student throughout the academic year, and we place about 10 to 20% on the year in spring. So if you take out that 10 to 20%, you're looking at maybe 5% to 15% of students who are in the fall semester trying to find placements after the first 2 weeks of classes. So very, very important to make sure that you submit your jobs by June 30th so we can guarantee that that job is listed in the system on August 1st when students gain access to this. When students gain access to JobX and begin to apply to positions. Graph on the bottom right, when do students actually start working? Around a third of students start that very first week of classes, and then another third start in the second week. So 2/3 of our students are ready to go before the second week of classes hit. What this means is we don't have a ton of students who are really, or I should say the majority of students are really looking forward to getting started at their jobs and like to do so. The blue section here, we have about 20% that start between third week classes and fall break. And then that green section, really, really small, 3.5% of students starting in mid to late fall. And then of course we kick over spring here that I was talking about. There's about 8.5% of students who are saying I started in spring, which is great. It's a little lower than the normal 10 to 20 we project, but that's because we had so many fall positions that people just stayed with this year. So very, very much a statistical encouragement for you as supervisors to have your jobs ready to go by June 30th and be ready to rock and roll with reviewing applications, hiring students, getting the HR and onboarding processes done, and having these students in place as soon as possible in the fall. This is a slide where if you were in the work study program as a supervisor 17-18, just pause the video, go pat yourself on the back right now, you deserve it. We ask work study students, again, with complete anonymity, how satisfied are you with your duties and your supervisors? And as you can see, they're much happier with the supervisors than the job, although they are really happy with both of those aspects. Very, very few students dissatisfied with either what they're doing or who they're working for. This is a little bit about skills development. Work study positions being professional development is really a huge national trend right now. They're more and more of the conversation about work study is about what are students getting out of these positions in terms of preparing them for jobs after college. So we wanted to go ahead and measure with no interventions on the part of the program these 8 dimensions that University Career Services says employers are looking for. So there's professionalism, work ethic, communication, so on and so forth. And we ask students, do you feel that your job is helping you build skills in these areas? And if you look, the vast majority of these responses are positive. And if we include positive or negative, you've captured the plurality of the data here. There's very few areas where work study jobs aren't helping students build skills. As you can see, we've arranged them so that the less skill building opportunities are down towards the right, and those would be global perspectives, understandable since most of our students are dealing with things on campus and in their smaller sphere. Career management, again, these jobs are meant to be professional, but they're not as roundly professional and longitudinally focused as we might like, so career management takes a bit of a hit. And then leadership, Definitely some leadership happening. The graphs on the left are the students, the graphs to the right in the pairing is the supervisor, and you can see around 2/3 of students say, yes, I'm gaining leadership experience, and about half the supervisors say they're gaining leadership experience. It's just not as high as some of the rest of these figures. So we are doing excellent, adding nothing to the program to get students to be building skills in areas that we really want them to be building. We are adding a little bit to make this a more skill developmental position and program in the 18-19 academic year. Again, I'll talk about that in the next session. It's another one of our initiatives. But bear in mind, having done nothing, we are still doing excellent work by these students in terms of helping them get where they need to go to find that professional, meaningful job right out of college. I'm going to talk a little bit about some things that we're not doing as well now. Nothing bad here, just things that we definitely want to work and improve on. So 2 related questions. We asked students, is it important to you that your employment is related to your academic, professional, or personal goals? Remember, it's very important to the federal regulations that we do so. I'll show you that regulation in just a second. And the question we pair with this is your employment actually related to your academic, professional, or personal goals? And when we look at comparing these trends, what we see is there's a negative slope for every one of these. So the interpretation is more students want to be doing professional development work. They want to be building their skills. They want to be gaining exposure and networking. More students want to be doing that than are doing that, which means we've got some deficiencies we need to overcome, because every student who wants a meaningful experience should be able to find one. That's what the regulations say. To the maximum extent practicable, employment should reinforce and complement recipients' educational program and career goals. This is going to tie right into a brand new program for 18-19 called IRIS that I'll talk about a little more later. But keep in mind, so if you're coming into the program 18-19, developmental positions, skill-based positions are really going to be a focus for us this year. Another area that we need to be doing better on, we have requested that people evaluate. We've not mandated or enforced, but we've always asked supervisors to evaluate students. So we went out and we asked the students, are you actually being evaluated? And we did create a tool for 17-18. We didn't mandate it, we didn't enforce it, but we made it available. And we were finding out that 2/3 of students absolutely are being evaluated. 15% not sure what that question meant, and then a little short of 20% said, no, nobody's reviewing anything with me. We pair this question with a question of, are the students who are being evaluated appreciative of it? And if you look at the numbers, yes, over 95% of students who get evaluated really like being evaluated. Again, there's a couple who couldn't make up their mind, and just 1 or 2 who did not like being evaluated. You could probably guess what was on their evaluation that might not, or might lead them to not appreciating the process. So the takeaway here is we're not evaluating everybody we should, but we're doing a good job of it, and the students really appreciate the evaluation. Everybody likes an A+ report card, right? Okay, so we followed that with a question about students who aren't being evaluated. Do you want to be evaluated? So, student, you're not being evaluated, would you like to be? And what we see is the yeses outnumber the nos. When you look at the left side, the people who said, definitely yes, I want an evaluation, or yeah, I think I might want an evaluation, compare that to the maybes, they're not sure. Compare it to the no's. You know, students are actually wanting to be evaluated, or they're a little curious about the process. Understandable, given that a number of our students actually have not really worked before their work-study positions in some cases, in a number of cases. So, again, we need to be evaluating. Students appreciate evaluations who get them, and students who aren't being evaluated, really are looking forward to that opportunity. So we're going to be doing more evaluations during the 18-19 year, and we're going to be providing you with many more resources on how to do that, and formats for doing that, and tools to work with you on doing so. Here is perhaps the most important question, or the biggest takeaway for people viewing this presentation. Supervisors, in your students' opinions, what could you be doing more of? What could you be doing better? How could you be improving the program? Remember, there were over 660 something students who took this survey, and only 140 people wrote in and had any sort of suggestion about what their supervisor could do better. And the #1 category was nothing, you're great. So 140 people out of 600 something writing in, most of them saying, my supervisor's doing a great job. They don't need to improve the program. They're great in their own. Second biggest category of responses are students wanting to break federal regulations and do things like work remotely and make $1 billion an hour and those sorts of things. Things that would be absolutely wonderful, and yes, they would improve the program for that student, but they're not actual suggestions that we could take in and utilize. So here are the real suggestions on things supervisors can do to improve the work-study program in their supervision. The biggest response out of these is students want more opportunities to sort of grow in their positions. They want new skills. They want higher level duties. They want to take on more responsibilities. They want to basically make your life easier by doing harder things, which means you don't necessarily need to do those harder things. So translating this another way, students want to be taking things off your plate and giving you more free time. It's a good way to look at it. All right. Next most responded category was students want to work more and they want help planning out their hours. We are making some tweaks to the time record log that you can utilize. It's already set up so that you can help students plan out their hours, but it's going to be a little easier to see now. Highly encourage you to talk to students and have an ongoing conversation about where students are in terms of their earnings and how much more work they want and how much more work that you could be giving them to try to make sure that they earn the full amount of their allocation. Next biggest category, summer work study. I got good news about that for 18-19 in the form of a brand new program called Carolina Works. Again, encourage you to check out our next presentation for more details there. Students want additional training and instruction. They want more help on being better at their jobs, more workshops, more trainings, more shadowing. So keep this in mind, especially towards the beginning of the year. Students are really looking for more help on doing what they do. And then the counter to that, the next point is more feedback and evaluations. They want to know how they're doing. They want to know what's going on, how they can be better, how they can build more skills, what can they be doing to make themselves a better version of themselves, which again is taking more work off your plate. Highly recommend that supervisors take advantage of this. And then the last two categories, supervisor soft skills. So mentoring, advising, coaching, sort of giving them that older sibling knowing professional dynamic and helping them get down the road towards their next professional step. And then the last one, more communication, especially regarding schedules, either flexibility for picking up more hours or what to do if they can't make it in, or can I trade in these hours for that hours, those sorts of things. So these are all wonderful opportunities for people who are going to be in the program for 18-19 to keep on your mind about how to be a better supervisor. And in comparison, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot one. One student wanted more pizza parties. I thought this was poignant. He included 3 exclamation points and a smiley face. So if you want to be a supervisor and you don't want to do the hard work, all it takes is pizza parties. They're very valuable to students. And if you have one, please invite Thomas and I. We would love to come out to your pizza party. Not just to eat your pizza, but you know, to meet your students and meet you. So just kidding about that. We'd love to come meet you regardless whether there's pizza or not. So here's our 18-19 list. Big improvements. Students wanting to be more professional, take on more duties, more work. Here's the list from last year by comparison. They wanted things that help them do the job. You know, they needed to know they need you as a supervisor to be more organized and more flexible and more clear on what they're doing. That was last year, and this year they're saying, we know what we're doing. We want to do more of it. So I don't have a pizza party 3 exclamation point smiley face for you, but I found this guy. So good job, supervisors in 17-18. Keep up the good work. 18-19 is going to be fantastic if we stay on the same trajectory here. All right, another thing we are not doing well that is really a big deal, to be honest with you, is our monitoring. So 2 things we asked supervisors: are you monitoring employee attendance, when students show up, when they leave, that sort of thing, and how many hours they're working and how much they're earning? The attendance is bad. Yes, we have like 84% of our supervisors are monitoring, and that's great. Thank you so much if you're one of those 84%. But if you're in the 16% of people who don't know when your students are showing up and leaving, that is in direct violation of federal regulations, and that could cost us a lot of money. If a federal auditor found that, it's a $25,000 fine potentially. So I would encourage everybody to think about tightening up your belts on that procedure a little bit. And the other piece is hours and earnings. How many people are actually monitoring how many hours their students have worked and how much they've earned and how that fits in with the award. If you've been with the program a while, you know that over earnings are our biggest problem. Students work more than they're allowed to, which is really good in terms of getting the students resources and getting work done, but it's really bad in that, again, it's a federal regulation, and every time it goes wrong, it's a $25,000 fine potentially. And if you look at the numbers here, it's somewhere between 17 and 18%. So almost 1 in 5 people aren't monitoring this, and it should be 0%, quite frankly. We really need to do better on this. You'll notice in 18-19 that we have tightened up the tools. We're going to continue our trend from 17-18 of being more communicative, more responsive, providing warnings and emails when students get close to their earnings. We've set up a whole system in JobX so that you can see students' earnings and remaining earnings and award on demand, and do a lot more with being preventative and looking at the data and trying to help us stay out of audit finding troubles. Here's that federal regulation I was talking about with timesheets. You have to keep a time record every time the student works. Every time they clock in, every time they clock out, they need to be doing that in front of a supervisor, a real live registered person, for the beginning and end of every shift. And you are responsible for signing off on those, which means if there are problems, unfortunately, you and your department are responsible for paying any overages or rectifying any issues. Okay, let me go into a little more mathematical example on those over earnings. During the 17-18 academic year, about 8% of our students had an over earning. Now, I don't want this to sound bad. Last year it was 12%, so we've improved vastly on this front, but it's still not good. I mean, if a student gets a 92% grade, hey, they're doing great. If we get a 92% grade in this front, we might be shuttering the program, and let me show you why. There's 199 over earnings, and each one could be a $25,000 audit finding, not counting the money we'd have to pay back if the federal government said we had to pay it back. And altogether, that is nearly $5 million in fines. If you remember from one of the very early slides, we didn't spend $5 million in earnings. So, in other words, the fines for this program alone could bankrupt the program. The federal government could ask us to pay more for not adhering to regulations than we actually spend on student wages, which would be the end of the work-study program, quite frankly. Now, in comparison, that $5 million fine can be prevented by $83,000 in overages either being paid back or not happening in the first place. So, if you're one of the people who got the sort of strident emails from me and my team about, hey, there's an overage coming up, or you need to be monitoring hours, or you went over, we really need you to pay this back, you know, we don't love sending those out, and we're sorry to be so strident about it, but this is why. You know, we're trying to make sure that this program is in good fiscal shape and stays that way so that we can keep going for many, many years to come and keep helping thousands of students every year to better afford their education through work study and grow as professionals through the same program. All right, so you might be asking, why do these over earnings happen? It's fairly straightforward. I sign off on a timesheet, and like 3 days later, Josh, you, and Thomas send me emails about where things are going. I don't understand the time issues here. Well, let me point out something. This is sort of a symbolic representation. This isn't based on one student's data, but this is very much the trend. You'll note that the earnings in green and the posted earnings in the lighter color of blue are always delayed. This is because when you submit a timesheet through Tim or Kronos, that information has to go through HR, through approval, through disbursement to pay, and then my team gets the data to do accounting and reconciliation. So what you think of as I submitted a timesheet on Friday and I got an email on Monday through Wednesday the next week, we are actually several weeks behind on that because of the inherent delays in the system. So what's essentially happening with over-earns is a situation like this, where the student looks good in sort of April. You know, they're close to the border, but what you see is this posted earnings is $25.50. What they've actually earned is $28.50. So you know they're getting close. We sent you the email, hey, they're within $550. You should monitor things, and you go, they got plenty of room. and you sign off on timesheets for April and May, and then we get to the end of the year where we're reconciling that data. It finally comes into the program, and the student is over awarded because of this delay. So it's essential, as you can see, for you as supervisors to be monitoring these awards and earnings to make sure that the over awards never happen. Here's another way to look at it. So if we're looking at pay period that ends, or you get paid on May 11th, the dates going into that pay period, not the 2 weeks preceding that in May. It's actually the 2 weeks before that. So our timesheets are about 2 weeks and 3 days behind in terms of reconciliation behind real time at minimum. If you ever want to look at this information, the finance website, this is the 16-17 version, the 17-18 will be out shortly. You can find it through finance.unc.edu, but you can see the time delays in how these are laid out. It's always a minimum, absolute minimum of 2 weeks between the sign off in the sheet and things getting dispersed, and then another 2 to 3 days depending on weekends and holidays before I can even get my team to access that information. So we really appreciate your help as supervisors who have this data in real time on how to prevent over earnings. One cool thing we did we really piloted it in 16-17 this spring, but we brought it in full force in 17-18 is this sort of reconciliation communication tool that we built. So we take payroll data from accounting and previous balances from our last reconciliation, employment data from JobX, and we feed it all into this really big macro-enabled gnarly workbook that I built. And it will determine if a student is near their limit, over their limit, or if it's been over, or if the student over-earned their award a pay period or more back, and the situation hasn't been resolved. And in all of those cases, we're trying to be more communicative and better partners here. We'll send out a communication to you as the supervisor, definitely, and if we haven't reached the end of the year, we'll let the student know as well. And what we ask is that you as supervisors work with your human resources representative or shared services center to create a PAT entry, which basically switches those over-earned dollars from the federal work study budget to a departmental budget. And in doing so, we've corrected any and all regulatory issues. So if you put the PAT through, even though the student over-earned because it's being paid out of non-work study funding, we've resolved the issue, no more $25,000 fine. Now, this information gets fed back into Connect Carolina, and then on the following payroll, the information flows through and we're able to start the process all over. It's a great system, but as I said, because it relies on accounting data, which is not real time, it's always at least 2 weeks and 3 days behind. So I hope that gives you a better understanding of why it's so important that we try and prevent and resolve these over earnings, and why we as a work study team need your help as supervisors, because you have access to the real-time data. You're the ones who are approving the TIM timesheets and are scheduling the students. So we really need your help. Now, you can use a few tools here. You can use the reactive system that we've set up for you. We'll encourage you to utilize and respond to those emails. But as we said, it's always at least 2 weeks and 3 days behind. So that's not going to prevent every case. So we need something a little more real time. So you could write down the hours every time that you do a TIM approval with pen and paper and keep track of it that way. You could build a spreadsheet off on your own to track all this sort of information, which, hey, I'm an Excel nerd. If you want to build your own tool, love it. Please, encourage you to do so. But if you want something that we've put together, there is this option called a tracking tool. We've been using it for a number of years. It's out on the website. If you Google for UNC Work Study and click on the supervisor link right in the middle of that page and scroll down here to the time record log, it brings up this wonderful tool that helps you track this information in real time. It looks just like this for 17-18. There'll be a new 18-19 version of this out on the web now if you're ready to get started for next year. And it's a very simple procedure. Number one, you drop the student's work study award in the green square. This number, you'll see it when you hire the student. You can see it on the application. As long as you don't put your job into storage, you can find this information real time through JobX. And then you'll put the student's hourly rate here in the blue cell. You establish this number, so you'll know it, but if you ever need to look it up, again, it's on the hiring email, it's on the site, and you will be actually putting it in when you create the position, so it's a great time to get these sheets started then. The tool will actually then calculate the number of hours for the year that the student can work. And then every time you go into TIM to approve a timesheet, you just drop that number here in the timesheet. So pay period 5, 12 hours reported, and it's going to calculate how many hours remaining. and you just keep doing this every time you submit a timesheet. The other piece to this is, remember in the survey, students were asking supervisors to provide them with more help on figuring out how many hours and earning the full amount of the award. A really cool feature of this timesheet is it doesn't just have to record what's happened in the past. You can sort of look at what's going to happen in the future. So you can plan out hours in advance using the same tool. All you have to do is put numbers in for the pay periods in the future. Personally, I like to change them to a different color so you don't get things backwards about what has happened and what you think might have happened. You know, you get to pay period 10 and you can't remember if that's what you predicted for 9 or what actually happened. But I leave it up to you to find the best way to use the tool. Obviously, it's open to some personal usage here. But you can simply hand this tool or a copy of it over to a student at any time and say, look, you have 348.39 hours that you get to work this year. We have you down for 241.39 more remaining as of the beginning of pay period 9. Let's look at when you're going to work. And this is great for helping students realize that maybe they need to do a few more hours a week or plan things accordingly. You'll note there are some zeros on here. Spring break, winter break. They normally work a few less hours right around finals. All common things for students, and this can help them plan it out to make sure that there are no interruptions for you as a supervisor. All of the work is getting done, and for the students, they know exactly what they have to do to earn their full award. This is a photo of what the 18-19 version is going to look like. We had several supervisors request, I want hours and I want dollars. So the system now works on both. Again, if you go out to the UNC work study site, the Supervisor Resources site on JobX, you'll note that this is what an individual page looks like. We also have it built so that you can use this for up to 10 students and track all of their information in one place. We thought it would be a time saver, and a couple of people who supervise said it would be a good idea. So always happy to build new things for our supervisors when they request them. All right, last little takeaway section here. So these are things that didn't go so well in 17-18, and they sort of keep Thomas and I up at night, and you know, we lose sleep over them, and we wind up looking like confused and very scared, grouchy babies here. So I've got them in two sections. There are major issues, things that the federal government would probably come and audit us on, and we would have lots of problems with. And then there are less than major issues. I definitely wouldn't call them minor, but these are things that are correctable, or they just prevent the program from functioning at a high level rather than functioning as intended. So here, major issues. One, violating federal regulations, especially over-earnings. You've heard me say it a few times. Over-earnings are a very big deal for us. Number two, again, over-earnings. I can't say it enough. That is the number one thing that as a program we need to do better on and have to do better on. And hopefully with your help we can do better in the 18-19 academic year. Third, missing training sessions and the information relayed there. We made a lot of changes in 17-18. I tried to be communicative about all those through the listserv, through the website, through our in-person presentations, but I know those changes didn't reach everybody, and I'm sorry if you're one of the people who didn't get all of that information. That's why we're trying to do more things like do these presentations live and then provide a recorded version for you. Things like being more communicative with the listserv. If you have any ideas or requests about how to make sure this information gets to you a little better, please let me know. work-study@unc.edu is my team's email address, and we are always looking for good ideas on how to make things better. So please, if you can make the training sessions, definitely do so. They're very beneficial. It's a great chance to dive more in depth on these topics. But if you can't make it, do what you're doing right now. Watch the video, catch up with it on your own time. Next item is missing the June 30th job posting deadline. This is a really big deal. If the job is not provided to my team by June 30th, I can't guarantee you that we will be able to get it into the system by August 1st when students gain access to the system. That's because there are so many jobs, and a lot of these require a little extra help. And with the extra initiatives we're trying to do, we can't always get to things as quickly as we like. So we really need everybody to get their jobs in by June 30th. This year, that's going to give everybody 3 weeks to update or to post the new jobs. And then Thomas and I are going to work really hard during the month of June and July and into August to get all these jobs posted. But if you could help us out by getting jobs to us by June 30th, it makes everything so much easier for everybody. Next, skipping reviews of approved jobs. Just because the job gets to Thomas and I and we say, yes, it's good, and we send it out to you, it doesn't necessarily mean it's what you want. In a lot of cases, people will copy and paste out a word, and the coding from a Word document to an XHTML document results in some funny things like bullet points turn into question marks, or there are some grammatical issues that get passed over, or spacing issues, those sorts of things. So we really encourage you, once you get that email message out of JobX saying, hey, your job's good to go, it's listed, students will have access to it on August 1, take a minute, go back and check out the job and make sure it still looks good, especially pre-August 1st, because if you do need to make any corrections, we have to go back through that approval process again. Next, hiring students without interviewing or confirming hiring. That was a regulatory change that we tried to make sure everybody knew about for 17-18. Is if you are hiring a new student, or maybe a student's coming back but they're going to a very different job, please make sure that you hire or you interview that student prior to hiring them, and get either some form of written communication to that student saying, we'd like to hire you, here's the conditions, and have the student reply to it saying, yes, these are acceptable, I want to work for you. We actually had 3 cases this year where people were, or excuse me, 3 different supervisors who hired people who just put in an application, but they never interviewed, they never confirmed the student wanted the job, and in one case that went all the way to the HR grievance process because the student did not want that job, the supervisor was insisting they work for them, and the student missed out on some other great opportunities. So please just make life easier for yourself. Interview the students, spend a few minutes with them, make sure they're a good fit rather than having somebody who's not a good fit, who doesn't work out for the year or doesn't show up, and do the confirmation email, confirmation phone call, however you want to do it. If you can send it by carrier pigeon, that's great with me, but something tangible and written and recordable that says the student actually wants the job and wants to work for you. Another big issue, not coordinating hires with human resources. Federal regulations are big on this, and federal employment law also big on this. The student has to meet with your HR officer or shared services center. They need to do an I-9. If they don't do an I-9 and you let them work, we're out of federal regulatory compliance with regards to employment law and program regulations. They need to do their W-4, their NC-4, their direct deposit. If that student works 1 second before all of that is done, it is a big audit issue if it ever comes up. So please, there's a really easy way when you hire the student. There's a little bar that you can carbon copy the email to your HR officer or shared services center. Please do that. The other one, poor or no onboarding. We found out in this year's annual survey, I didn't disclose this one because it's a little more in-depth, but essentially if a student does a good onboarding process with their supervisor, meaning they spend more than an hour with a supervisor, they clearly review the expectations, the evaluation forms, they meet everybody they'll be working with, they tour the space, there's a very tangible conversation about what the student is supposed to be doing and how that may change, and the student takes in writing the jobs they're going to be doing, how they're going to be evaluated, and what their expectations are with them. Students who did that are 11 times less likely to have issues than students who spent less than an hour on onboarding. So this isn't purely time-based, but it's a matter of quality. The higher quality of an onboarding process you do directly correlates to how few problems you will have with that student. Okay, let me say that one more time. It is a very good idea for you to spend more than an hour and thoroughly talk about the position, the student's expectations, how they'll be evaluated, what they'll be doing, who they'll be working with, and where they'll be working prior to that student actually starting their duties. It will make the student, statistically speaking, more likely to show up on time, to not call out, to do better quality work, to do more work, and to be happier, which directly relates to, guess what, you being happier as a supervisor. All right, and one more time, not tracking student hours leading to over-earnings. Really have to do better on the over-earnings. Appreciate your help. That's the major. Let's talk about less than major. Here they are, poor job postings. We don't stop supervisors who don't have the greatest job postings out there. We do heavily send back requests that they reevaluate it. Please, you want to take the time and do a good job with your job postings. There's lots of resources out on the supervisor resources page in JobX. The other piece to this is, as we talked about, the job posting itself. We talked about this during training. The job posting itself determines which of the 4 wage tiers the student's position is listed in. So if you write a very thin, very blasé, not detailed description of what the student will be doing, there is less chance that that student is going to get paid more per hour. which directly affects the quality and experience of the students that you will attract. We did have an issue this year with a lot of supervisors getting moved into a different wage tier based on their posting, which we're always happy as a work study team to work with you on that and help you revise the posting to get where you need to be and want to be in terms of wage issues. But bear in mind, this is a problem. So spend the extra time to make sure that the job posting is clear, is succinct. It really fits the question of, if it's a student looking at it, what is this job? How am I going to do it? And why would I want to do it? Okay. Second one, no secondary supervisors. Do yourself a favor. It's really hard to supervise students all by yourself, especially since you have to physically see them at the beginning and end of every shift, right? So talk to other people in your department, talk to other work study supervisors in your area, have somebody sign up as a secondary supervisor. If all they do is when you're in meetings or sick or vacation, sorry, we're at UNC, we don't take vacation, in the bathroom, we'll say that sort of thing. Having somebody else there who can check the students in and out as a backup for you is a lifesaver. So please think about getting a secondary supervisor. It doesn't cost you anything. It can be any full-time or permanent staff member. It takes less than an hour to get registered, and all you have to do is update your posting and drop that person's name in from a drop-down. Next issue is little to no student performance feedback. Of course, I said in 1819 we are going to be requiring official evaluations. That's going to be at the end of every semester, and then recommending them at the midpoint. But really, feedback should be a much more regular topic, potentially even weekly, about how a student's doing, what they could be doing better. It's an opportunity to give them feedback on training, improvement, performance. Would highly encourage you to think about how to incorporate into your supervision style. Next to last point, missed growth, mentoring opportunities. Again, we have supervisors who aren't really interested in being mentors or coaches. They really just want to be supervisors, and we understand that, but just, a lot of students are looking to their supervisors for guidance, for advice, to be an example of professional development and how they can grow and what they might do after college. You're not required to do this, but people are looking for it. So if you are willing to step up and take that extra, do that extra effort and help that student figure out where they want to go and what they want to do, it's very much appreciated. And then the last one's suboptimal utilization of students and their talents, which basically means the student's capable of doing more than we're letting them do in the program. Our students are brilliant. They're hardworking. They get a lot done. And giving them opportunities to grow and do more in the program is a big, big win. Again, it lets you as a supervisor take something off your plate and gives the student an opportunity to grow in terms of professional development themselves. All right, that's all I've got for you today. There's 2 more sections of this presentation coming up. One on 4 brand new initiatives. The IRIS program for research positions, the Carolina Works job, the skill alignment with University Career Services, and the early rehire program, not to be missed. You should be able to see it in a link right before where you were linked to this video. You can find all of those presentations and more at our website, which is right there in front of you, or you can simply just Google UNC Work Study and click on that supervisor link in the middle of the page. If you have questions about this presentation or anything else to do with the work study program, please don't hesitate to email Thomas and myself. You can reach us both at work-study@unc.edu. Thank you so much for viewing the presentation, for being a part of the program, and we hope you'll be with us in the 18-19 year. Bye-bye.